Hello and welcome to the Privacy Podcast. I'm Ben Schiller from Miden. And joining us today are the two founders of Miden, or two of the three founders of Miden. We have Azeem Khan, he's a business lead. And we have Bobbin Threadbare, who's really the brains behind the operation, technical lead. Thanks very much for doing this.
That's awesome.
So how did you come to be here, sitting here? I mean, to be together. So Bobbin, you were originally at Polygon and with Facebook, where you developed a lot of the technology. How did you meet?
A mutual friend introduced us, and one of the venture funds who was investing in Miden had reached out to me. And at the time, I was searching for what I wanted to do next and was being honestly quite specific. And each team reached out and in their own words basically said that they were investing in a technically savant-like crypto team. And one of the things that they thought could be interesting would be to see if the business understandings that I've had of this industry could be helpful to the project as they're looking to finish up fundraising and move forward. We chatted for 4 months every week and discussed different aspects of what it means to launch a crypto business from the business side, and spending time trying to understand the very interesting technical side of things that we're doing with Miden. And honestly, after 4 months, I came to the decision that it made the most sense for a variety of reasons. But honestly, the biggest one to me was this industry is absolutely full of a bunch of people who have done nothing but have the biggest egos in the world. And in my opinion, just don't deserve to have those egos. And then not only Bobbin, Dominic, but the whole team. And it comes from the leadership that both Bobbin and Dominic brought, but just this insane, strong sense of humility while also being extremely hardworking. And when I thought about, what is it that I want to spend years and years doing, it really started with who are the people that I want to work with, and sitting down and looking at just the quality of their character made me say, this is where I want to spend my time.
Great.
And I can say the same thing in the opposite direction, because for us, when we were talking, it was very important to make sure we're aligned on multiple dimensions. And this is philosophical dimension, ethical kind of work styles and all of that stuff. And it was just amazing how basically every single checkbox was checked, and where I think we spend the time, but we spend it in such a way where we Learned about each other, understood it, basically, this is a perfect match. I mean, we were extremely lucky from our end, because it is almost like a perfect complement, and in many ways, and complement in terms of skills and abilities, but also a perfect match in terms of overall philosophical and kind of perception of the space. Yeah.
Okay. So you came together, you came from Polygon, you came from some other projects. There was a spin out from Polygon with some funding from A16Z and others last April. Now we're a standalone company. Just give us a sense of what the roadmap is quickly. How quickly are we going to mainnet?
Yeah, so we're on testnet right now. We actually have been deploying testnets fairly consistently over the last year. Every 2 months, we deploy a new testnet. And we're very close to transitioning from testnets to mainnet. This should happen somewhere within May, June timeframe of this year. So basically, 4 or 5 months away from now, this is roughly the time frame. We'll be on mainnet, and we have an amazing cohort of products being built on Miden right now. So we want to also make sure that we go to mainnet not just with an empty blockchain, but with some solid applications. And of course, the building will not stop there. There is a lot of development. We can go into our post mainnet plans as well. But the immediate focus is to make sure we have a very solid network at mainnet time with some really usable products.
Right. So we're known as having a technically sophisticated blockchain in this privacy space. Mm-hmm. What would you say are the main use cases for Miden and for privacy blockchains like Miden?
I'd break them up into 4 categories initially, or 3 categories initially. One would be, there's a lot of things in the financial services space, absolutely, where private payments or private payroll, private trading, private neobanks. There's all these things that people have been doing on blockchains to date, where they're doing them on entirely transparent blockchains. And as we look at what it means to go towards mass adoption, we can't build the backbone of the global financial system on a public ledger. And so I'd say that's one of the biggest things that we've been looking at and tackling in the near term. There's a lot of things that I think in the future will make a lot of sense, whether it's governance or gaming. There's healthcare. There's so many things that could really be done. At the moment, though, the use cases that make the most sense really tend to be ones that are based on financial services. And we have some excellent teams building some of the applications that we spoke about.
And I do want to maybe add a little bit. I think, as Azeem said, like transparent blockchains are not going to work. And I just don't think people realize how dire the need is because especially with the extremely quick transformation in AI that is happening, where people like believe that they are kind of somehow pseudo-anonymous behind this veil of like, I'm going to use an address that people don't, nobody can link to my identity. And, right now it costs some money to figure out like your transaction history, like to real world activities and all that stuff. In the next 2 years, this is going to be pennies. Like you're going to have like some AI tool there where you type in somebody's address and it will give you full history about them. And like people don't realize how like, the industry may, in my mind, may not even survive if there's no privacy solutions in the next couple of years on the market.
Right. So just quickly explain how Miden works and how it's different from a traditional blockchain.
So Miden is a zero knowledge based blockchain. And one of the core properties of Miden is that we try to push as much things as possible to the client side, and that includes both the computation and the state. And this is needed for both privacy and scalability reasons. We are able to do that because we have zero knowledge proofs, very fast proofs that run on the client side, where you can actually prove things on your phone or like regular laptops and things like that. And what this allows us to do is remove the fundamental bottlenecks of blockchains, where you had to either choose between like decentralization but being slow, or you had to choose being fast, but then you have to be centralized or much more centralized, and you wouldn't get privacy in either one of those cases. And so Miden is really like I would say, third generation of blockchain in my mind. Like the first generation was the Bitcoin, and then that enabled like this transfer of value without intermediaries across the internet. The second generation was Ethereum, which really exploded kind of the programmability and the ability to create interesting and new applications. And the third generation is like adding privacy and programmability together. And so I think of Miden as this new generation of blockchain that pushes things to the client side with client side proofs and allows you to still have full programmability, allows you to include any kind of compliance rules and all of that stuff that is needed for real world applications. And so, and Miden is basically a privacy chain with unlimited programmability and almost unlimited scalability.
And it has unlimited scalability because you're not doing all the execution on chain at once.
Exactly. Yeah. You're doing all the computations locally, and the chain just needs to verify the result of the transaction.
Okay. And who are the kind of people that need this type of blockchain?
Honestly, everyone needs this kind of blockchain. When we look at what's going on in emerging markets, or even within the United States where people don't have access to bank accounts, we're seeing an influx of payroll solutions that will allow people to be paid in stablecoins, for instance. And the idea that you would put the entirety of your salary on top of a blockchain that anyone can look at isn't a world that people actually understand at the moment. You don't want it so that if you go to the local coffee shop and you get your cappuccino, and after that, the person who you bought your cappuccino from would have access to your entire financial history, as opposed to you swipe your Visa credit card, they get their money and they get nothing more than that. And so I think it goes to what Bobbin was saying, is that people don't understand just how non-anonymous they really are. They think that this 0x and then string of numbers means that they're in some capacity anonymous, but it's not the case at all. And so there's tons of things where we're talking about being able to add blockchains to them, and all of them are use cases that really don't work when you have a transparent ledger that anyone can assess.
Yeah. But I find this quite perverse, actually, because, in many people's minds, blockchains are supposed to be private. They're supposed to protect user rights. But in some ways, they're sort of worse than traditional systems, because people might have the expectations that they're private, but they're not private, so they might become sort of a honeypot for information in the same way that an AI agent is sort of a honeypot, because you think it's sort of a cuddly toy that you can play with and you tell it your worst secrets. So,
I mean, in some ways, transparent blockchains are like almost perfect surveillance tools.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's, I think when we say surveillance, we sometimes think it's state surveillance, and this is, of course, the case. But it also makes it incredibly easy for criminals to identify people who to target, right? Because it's there. Like you, as you said, you went to bought something at a coffee shop, and now they see that your net worth, and they know where you are and who you are, and it creates enormous attack surface for regular people, and they're
The amount of people who've been getting targeted from the crypto industry, weirdly enough, in France in the past year and a half, it seems like there's constantly a new announcement of this happened. And even for myself, one of the strange things that I've dealt with has been that we've had venture funds who've reached out to us and other companies who've basically given us an entire thing on what are you supposed to do in the event that you get kidnapped? Because we work in the blockchain industry, it's something that we're seeing more and more, and this comes from a lack of privacy. If you're working at, Revolut, this isn't something that you have to deal with.
So, Bobbin, how do you balance having a fully transparent chain with a fully anonymous chain or fully private chain? And the needs of users and the needs of regulators are very different, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think there is always this tension because in some ways, privacy is a dual-use technology, right? That it is essential on one hand for users to be private, but it also makes job of criminals and nefarious actors a bit easier, or in some cases a lot easier. And so I think our approach to this has been, and there are some other reasons for this, and we'll talk about it, but we want to launch the centralized mode where users will be private against themselves or amongst each other, but they will not be private against the operator of the network or operators of the network. And this gives us the ability to in the initial stages make sure that North Korea is not going to launder money through Miden, or some other nefarious activities are going to happen on Miden. In the longer term, there is still a lot of work to be done. This is an open research question: is how do you build a decentralized network, which also has this evasion resistance built in, which is where most people are private or have full privacy, but there's some small subset of transactions that may have some conditional privacy. And we will spend the next 3-4 years after going to mainnet to figure out what's the proper way to do it in such a way where we can actually improve in a traditional financial system. We can build a network where in traditional financial system about between 2 and 5% of activity is actually money laundering and all of that stuff. We want to build a system that is better in that dimension, and so that is one of the goals. And the other goal is zero knowledge proofs are complex technology, and we don't want to go to mainnet with something that we're not 100% sure about, right? It is in the context of zero knowledge proofs or private network, a bug could be a catastrophic bug because you will not even be able to detect that there is a bug happening. And so by going first in the centralized mode, we will be able to catch bugs more quickly and fix them more quickly as well. And once we feel much more comfortable and formally verified and put much more effort into the underlying proving systems, then that's when we will remove the guardrails. That's our approach. Not everybody is in the streams pursuing that approach, and there are obviously different philosophies on this, but we feel much better going with this, the safer route, which doesn't creates less potential for catastrophic failures.
I mean, there are other projects, other privacy projects that have full decentralization to begin with that may lack visibility into their systems, and there are other systems that may claim to be blockchains that maybe aren't exactly blockchains. Do you want to comment on that?
I think in terms of blockchains going direct, I think the best example is Zcash, right? And the Zcash has been around for a while, but not many people know that there was a bug in Zcash discovered where, it was the right people who discovered the bug, but if it was the wrong people who discovered the bug, they would have given themselves infinite money. And there was a period of almost 6 months where this bug was exploitable. And so, it was pure luck in some ways that this happened, and the best outcome and Zcash survived. Had some other people found the bug, that Zcash would not be around right now. And this happens, every system has these things. And so this is the flip side of decentralization. And again, there are people who are willing to take these trade-offs and for right reasons. And there is a lot of respect to be given to them, but also, again, there's a flip side to that coin. And on the other hand, yeah, you can go try to not even to use zero knowledge proofs to claim we have privacy, but then you have to sacrifice other things, right? Zero knowledge proofs are there for a reason. We want to be able to use math and cryptography to prove the correctness of the state transitions and all of that stuff. Now, if you rely on some subset of actors, smaller set of the network and things like that, yeah, you can have privacy, outside of that small bubble, but then your security is limited to that small bubble, and you have to keep things permissioned in a way, because as soon as you open up and make things permissionless, and you don't have zero knowledge proofs, it's just not going to work.
So it's your job to get users on the system, to get applications on the system, to get companies on the system. How are you doing that? I mean, how are you encouraging and talking to companies, institutions to come onto Miden?
So to step back real quick, the way I would say that the majority of what we've seen in terms of building ecosystems, and when I say ecosystems, I mean applications built on top of blockchains.
Like a Solana ecosystem,
yeah,
for instance.
A Solana ecosystem, right, would be that the people who are running the blockchain set aside an amount of money in the form of grants, and they find builders who are looking to build unique or fun or innovative applications on top of said blockchain. And they'll give them grants, sometimes small, sometimes big, sometimes small and then big over time. And the idea is to be able to help stimulate the initial growth, because there's opportunity cost to picking one blockchain. These builders can build on 100 blockchains, and 100 blockchains will offer grants. So these builders are deciding based on what we want to build, we want to go to the blockchain that makes the most sense for us. And then they get given a grant, and then they start building something. The problem that I've found in this space for so many years is that if you think about the blockchain themselves, they're venture scale applications. You were speaking earlier, we raise venture dollars. And so we're a venture company who has venture scale timelines for success. And when it comes to the applications built on top of the blockchains, you need them to basically be able to be successful without having access to the same timeline that you require and without the same access to the resources. So you're not giving them the entire sum of money that you raised, and you need them to be successful faster than you so that it proves that your blockchain is valuable. And to me, a model like this essentially means that you have to hope that someone building something on top of your blockchain wins the lottery of sorts, right? And it's not to say that this isn't valuable to do. There are certain primitives on each blockchain which make a lot of sense to build. Like on Miden, because there's privacy built in, we think it's very easy to say, hey, you can do private payroll on this blockchain. And it makes sense for us to find builders who want to build and do private payroll. At the same time, for us, hoping that we're going to make sure that we have one or more lottery winners, essentially, that build applications on top of our chain, and betting on the success of the entirety of the company on that isn't something that makes sense in its entirety. While it's important to do that, we've been calling that sort of the bottom-up strategy, is that you have to go from the bottom, start building, figure out distribution, and then go from there.
Build it and hope they come.
Build it and hope they'll come, right? The way that we've been looking at things, though, is that we have this unique blockchain that offers things that other blockchains don't, which makes us more compelling to build on top of, especially for certain use cases. And we've also found that if you go to, a variety of types of companies who might be really interested in building on blockchain technology, the reality of what it takes to go from 0 to 1 and building those things in a traditional institution, to be able to hire and retain the talent, to know what they want to build, to know what blockchain they should build on top of. There's so many layers of complexity that come in that it's simply not going to happen. And so what we've been doing is sort of a top-down strategy where we've been going to parties that make sense, where we say, hey, you have one aspect of what we're looking for distribution, for capital, for being able to get the word out, whatever it might be. And we have access to builders, and we can build, manage, and maintain a project. And we can do capital formation if money needs to be raised. And so we can do everything from the technical perspective, but to be able to scale that distribution problem, in all business, there's product and then there's distribution, right? Doesn't matter what business you go back to. And so the way we've been approaching it is finding parties that we think have access to the distribution. And we say, hey, these are the unique properties that make Miden better to build on than these other chains. And we're willing to come to the table in a way that, whether you want to call it sweat equity, let's set up a joint venture. And in that joint venture, each of us brings to the table what we're good at doing. And we're in a position then where we can have, can't call it instant success. And this isn't something that you take 100 bets on. But if you're looking to be able to say that you're more likely to succeed, it would be by bringing the parties together who can give you product and distribution.
So Bobbin, talk about the roadmap then. What are you going to be working on the next few months?
Yeah, so the next few months, like the laser focus on the launching the mainnet. We've been kind of in the testnet phase for a while, progressively getting more and more stable and adding features. I think our testnet phase, by the way, has been informed by a lot of like pioneers that we work with, because we we're not building just a blank protocol, right? We want to make sure it fits the use cases that, as Azeem said, that we have hypotheses about. And so we've been even at the testnet phase updating the protocol and make sure it fits the needs of the pioneers and others that we think are the right fit for Miden. And the testnet phase is closely coming, soon coming to an end. We have maybe another 4 or 5 months left and then after that we'll go to mainnet, and this will be, May, June timeframe. And then obviously there's going to be much more work. As I mentioned, we're going to go to mainnet in the centralized mode. And then after we go to mainnet, we will work both on adding, removing the guardrails, hardening the proving system, adding decentralization, improving developer experience, and all of that stuff. That's still a lot of work to come, but the mainnet is the pivotal moment for us in the next, less than half a year, I would say.
Thank you so much, Bobbin. Thank you, Azeem. I'm Ben Schiller. This is the Privacy Podcast, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.